Thank you, Nathan. This is Andy B on the Get Your Home Show. The time, it's nearly 5:05 on the 30th of April, 2026. If you're not quite sure where we are in the world in time, knowing where you are in the world is a good thing. And for that, there are lots of people we can speak to. One of them is Laure Jackson. Hello, Anne.
Hello, it is great to be here. I can't believe we're coming to the end of April. That means that it's May. It's May tomorrow.
It's May in the morning, which means, very exciting, Pure Media, the magazine in which you write, is out tomorrow morning. And what's really exciting is we launched an additional separate monthly magazine for men, and we are on time ahead of schedule.
Wow, that is amazing.
We have a good team, in fairness, but yeah, we're actually out on time. Now, I'm not going to start asking you about your article in the magazine, but that's one of the things we do. But yeah, it's just really exciting that as we're hitting May, we've got a really busy 6 months ahead for us. So I'm really chuffed that we've got the magazine out. If you're thinking what's wrong with Andy B's voice, it's called rapeseed. If you know what that is, it's what you make vegetable oil out of, kinda. Beautiful yellow flower. There are acres, hectares probably around us, and they're flowering, hence my voice. It's fine. Now, Anne, you are a sensory health specialist. You're an occupational therapist as well. Mm-hmm. And that then led into your sensory health. Before we get into today, just I think it's good to recap occasionally. Why do you focus on sensory health when occupational therapy is already quite a finite field to a degree? It's quite specific. And then you've gone even further specific. Why not just do, I guess, what would be easier and just stick to being an OT? Why have you gone into sensory health?
That's such a good question. It's just like, oh yeah, why do I always pick? I never seem to be straightforward. I'm never just do what's in the box. I'm very much of an out of the box person. But I think when something grabs me, I think that the power of sensory processing was that it just affected and affects so many aspects of who we are as humans. So when you train as an OT, you look a bit into physical health and rehabilitation. You look at housing. I love housing as well, and adapting it. And you get equipment to help you do things if you're a bit, if you've lost a limb, or you've had a stroke, or you're growing older, so you're not able to do things the same way, or you're a child. It goes across all ages. It goes all through disability of any sphere, but also it is very much into function and participation. So it's not even that you have to have any form of diagnosis. There's a strong element of just, we want to be able to help anybody do anything that they want to be able to do. So there are so many different branches to occupational therapy, but this one really grasped me as I was a very young therapist. And I was dramatically changed by the difference I saw in seeing experienced OTs work with children with autism, and the power of sensory processing and integration in not only what the children could then do when they had their senses helped, but also understanding where their behaviors were coming from. And I love understanding things. I love that problem solving. I love watching detective programs. I love trying to work things out. So for me, it was such a good fit. And also because I just love helping all kinds of people, and sensory processing and integration goes across all ages and stages and abilities and disabilities. And then the sensory health aspect is, let's get everybody making the most of life as much as possible.
And this is one of the things we've enjoyed exploring for the last, it's coming up towards 3 years, and we're over 100 sessions now, where we look at sensory health from all sorts of different perspectives. We've gone kind of through, I suppose, specific issues that you've come across and dealt with. We've then come across Andy B's brain's version of how do you deal with that, which we're still doing and probably will be forever because it's really good fun. Because I think sensory health is one of those where I had a really rudimentary understanding of the senses. Okay, there's 5 senses. We kind of grasp that. We probably only use 3 most of the time in our own minds. There are many more. We've learned that. But I knew the importance of sensory health because I've worked a teeny tiny bit. By worked, I mean special needs school, specifically for children with physical disabilities for the most part. There were a few there perhaps that had an accident and they had some brain trauma as well. But what I enjoyed in that work experience for a couple of weeks, and I went back for sort of a couple of subsequent summers, was I loved seeing how changing something fairly minor could have such a big effect. So you go in and you change, I don't know, Here's a simple one for you. If you're sitting on a chair right now and it's too high for your legs, you're going to feel pressure on the middle of your thigh between the knee and your hip. It's going to feel pressure. So what do? You automatically drop the seat just a tiny bit and it takes the pressure off. All of a sudden, you're not uncomfortable. Anybody trying that? That'd be interesting. You're not uncomfortable, and now you're more comfortable in order to work. Now you're not distracted by a seemingly innocuous, teeny tiny thing, and you can get on with the job at hand. And in the same way, in that school that I went to, particularly with some of the children who had in wheelchairs, which was quite a large chunk of the children that we were with, just seeing the difference that they would have when something small was dealt with in their life. So rather than like, here's a table, normal adult-sized table, off you go. Well, they can't work. So they had tables that were height adjustable for one of the children. And I was a bit shocked because I'd never seen this. You know, I was in school, I was 15 or 16 or something, and all the tables are the same. And yet for this one child who had a wheelchair, rather than saying, well, sit up properly, they can't. It's literally impossible. Their spine was bent. So they had a table they could lift up and down and angle slightly for this young person. And all of a sudden, they were able to really excel in their work. And I watched that difference. And that's one of the memories that stuck with me, because it was almost irrelevant what was changed. They changed the height of a table. Who cares? Hey, we all do that. No. This was enormous for this child, because now they could actually concentrate. They were comfortable. They could have a book and a pen and everything was transformed just by the seemingly irrelevant height adjustment on a table.
Yeah, we often talk about it. I don't think I've talked about it too much here, but it's kind of like when we're looking at in financial terms, all of us know that we have a certain amount of budget for the day, the week, the month, whatever it is, until you're paid next. And you've got this amount of budget. So if you have a child in school or anybody in the office and they have a certain budget for focus, attention, energy, doing what they need to do, if you don't have good seating, if somebody spends an awful lot of time working out, holding themselves up against gravity because they have poor vestibular proprioceptive processing, they've got low tone, they are not good at sitting still and keeping still, they are using a huge amount of their budget, their daily budget, on just sitting. So the amount of time that they need to focus and concentrate, all of that is reduced because they've lost all their energy reserves for the day have gone. Their budget has gone because it's been spent on sitting on something that really doesn't work for them. So not only, as you say, for that person, they've got their wheelchair, they need something to be at the right kind of height in order for them to engage with it properly. And when all of that external stuff is in place, then you can focus on the things that you really need to focus on. And therefore you have the budget, you have the capacity, you have the bandwidth, however you want to describe it, but to then function and thrive and do what you want to do well.
I guess one of the things that struck with me so hard was how there were so many little things that could be done. I remember when I was at school and I struggled to hold a pen, and one of the teachers got me a slightly oversized pen, not enormous, but it just wasn't quite like a big biro size. It was about sort of 3 times the thickness, another standard pen, almost like a felt. And they said, well, just try writing with this. I mean, I don't know. I remember it vaguely because I was probably 6 to 8 years older than that. And I remember struggling with holding a pen. That was my greatest problem. And everyone said, well, just get on with writing what you're doing, write properly. But if I can't hold a pen, it doesn't matter how much you're told you should do or how much you see, you can't. And this one teacher gave me a pen. It was a red pen. I remember that. It was quite chunky and I could hold it better. And it just gave me so much confidence to have a go at writing. Now, my writing is still dreadful. It is. It's just one of those things. But I can read it and that's all I need to know. But it was this going from a really narrow pen to a much chunkier pen. All of a sudden I can hold it better. And it wasn't just that I could write. It gave me confidence to try because somebody was trying. Now, I'm sure that pen could have been another 5 millimeter bigger or smaller and been even more perfect, but it's not the point. It's not about getting the exact perfect fit. It's about trying something different that helps me. Now, I don't have to use it anymore. I didn't probably a year later, but at the time, all I needed was a slightly chunkier pen.
Mm-hmm. And if we can facilitate somebody to think in a way that they didn't before, then I'm so happy that we're doing this and continue to do this. I'm working with an adoptive family at the minute. And their biggest struggle is that they just were completely clueless. They had no idea why these behaviors were so challenging, what was going on, why he was so obstructive. I'm using their, terminology, not very PC, but it's the reality, really, really hard work. And one of the lovely things was actually just jumping around on everything and wanting to swing on everything, and never mind about the kind of what felt like disobedience and whatever. And it's like, well, if you understand it from a sensory perspective, we often talk about it like as a sensory lens. If you look at those behaviors and have a look at what his body's telling you, the fact that he can't cope, he can't function, he's going to be flat on he is flat, he literally is flat on the floor if he's not actively moving. So for me, that is telling me that he has that proprioception, that vestibular integration, so that information coming from his muscles and his joints, the information coming from his movement systems are not reaching his brain in a way that helps him understand and settle in space, just settle to do something, because as soon as he doesn't move, he genuinely doesn't feel where his body is. It's a very, very scary place to be. And when you're dealing with all the issues of attachment and abandonment and loads of other things that when you're little you can't put words to, but you're struggling in many ways emotionally, you have to do something. And when you can understand how important that the physical sensory processing is to all of this, it really makes an awful lot of sense. And then it gives you things that you can do about it. So this family, well, apart from the fact of saying, oh, now I really understand what he does and why he does it, we've got other strategies that they can employ to make life that bit easier. Especially because, he's also kicking. So in kicking, when you actually kick something, it gives you deep touch pressure. It gives you a lot more proprioceptive input because you're using your muscles, you're connecting with your joints. You get a bit of a thwack back. It's not what you're doing necessarily to the other person. It's the feedback that you get in your own body when you do these behaviors. And I'm always looking at what happens to the person's body, the individual's body, by doing these things. Other psychologists and whatever else would look at the impact on the person on the receiving end. But I'm much more about, let me see what's going on from a sensory perspective for the one doing the harm or doing these challenging or difficult behaviors, and seeing if we can address that from that perspective.
I don't know why I thought we'd go this direction. This is not what I thought I would do. But I remember at school, there's a very, very brave teacher who was talking about the problems of education. This is secondary school. So if you're thinking, what's that? You're talking roughly 10 to 16-year-olds, somewhere around there. And he was talking to us. I was actually upper sixth at the time. So that's nearly 18 years old. So it's like an extension part of the school. And he was talking to us about the problems with education. I say brave because he said the problem with education is it's too much for girls. Education is not built for boys. Girls do really well at school in exams. And it frustrates me, this is what the guy said, because girls do well and boys do badly. And everything's, well, boys aren't as smart. And he said it's just not true. But the education system is skewed to female style learning because a lad wants to go and have a run, wants to go and kick a football about. It's not that he doesn't want to learn, although he was talking about some of the psychological differences in maturity and brains and all that sort of stuff. The problem is that the lads just don't want to sit there because they want to play. They want to play football. They don't want to sit and learn about Shakespeare. And it is less that they don't want to learn about Shakespeare, more that they actually just want to go and have a run. And if you did that, he said, if I was allowed to teach children properly, I would always be outside. The girls probably would want to sit down. Not always. He's talking stereotypes. And the boys would probably want to run around a bit. I'd do teaching in between. And then he said, I could lift all the levels up at the same time. But because we had to teach them the same in a very feminized education system, he was very frustrated. Now, you might have issues with any and all of that. Don't really care. I'm quoting what he said. But I certainly saw some of that. Now, I'm not the kind of guy that wants to go around kicking a football. I'd quite happily sit and do other stuff. It's a stereotype. But I guess that, again, is coming into the sensory arena of actually understanding. Because one of the things I know now, as a dad of nearly 50, that he definitely grasped was girls and boys are absolutely two very, very different genders. The way that they learn is very different. And he got quite angry about the education system being too feminized, which was the way he described it, because he said, we're not thinking about boys. We're saying that as intelligent. They're not learning as well. Girls are smarter. So no, you're not, they said. It's just that we're putting girls in an environment where they're going to learn best, and boys generally won't until they're much older, and then it changes. But I don't know why I've said all that stuff, but I don't know your thoughts on any of that. Am I talking rubbish? Was he talking rubbish? I don't know.
Yeah, the biggest thing I thought there was a great I love co-ed, where boys and girls, learn together. You learn a lot of good things, but I really also appreciate the single sex schools because you ought to, now whether this happens or not, I don't know, you ought to be able to structure things so that the lads and the boys can have a lot more physical input. It's that proprioceptive vestibular input that they really, really need more so. The girls need it. They absolutely do. And we've got a lot of our adults or a lot of our 20s that are realizing that actually they do have quite significant sensory processing issues, but they're able to mask it in the school environment. But you get a lot more, burnout and whatever else later on because they are holding it together in school, and they look socially appropriate enough, and they can sit because it's a slightly different way of processing. But for the boys, having that extra physical and doing more of it during the day is definitely feeding into their systems and into their growth because of the intensity of their muscles, of their bones, of their structures generally. Everything is needed a little higher level from a physical capacity. I'm sure there are educationalists who are listening who will understand. And we'll point out all the different thinking processes and all the rest of it between them. But for me, it is that sensory perception of themselves and of the world that really is best targeted to the genders in a different way.
I don't know why I was sharing that. I think possibly because I think it comes into how we all learn and we're all different. It's recognizing that men are not women, women are not men. We are very different. And one of the ways that we see that very, very ably, which is what this teacher was highlighting, is in a school environment, which is obviously quite a disciplined setting. There are rules. They use uniforms, at least in the UK. So you have to do this and you have to do that. And that's across the board. But the actual learning styles, which is what this guy was getting really frustrated about, he said the problem is it's just not set up for boys. At certain ages, they said, it's so frustrating. I know I'm going to deliver a lesson. It's going to be a completely pointless waste of time because none of the boys are going to hear anything at certain times of day. He said, I know they've already zoned out. They just want to go and kick football. Girls, focus. Boys, but there's a field and it's sunny. And he said, I can see it at certain ages, certain times of the day. It takes me back to that school with that wheelchair, with a table that could be adjusted. I think it had an angle as well, so it wasn't just up and down. It could be angled for this lad who had a curvy spine. And I just think, well, if we can do that for a lad in a wheelchair, can we not think about school more about the person rather than the exam? Because exams, where we go now, the exams are really important, but they're not that important. Because the person's more important than any qualifications, because qualifications can be useful and not. And I think that's probably where I'm coming from with this now random chat. You think, where's he going? But I think it is this idea of how we learn and the sensory health elements of it. If you're in a car and it's really hot, you're going to get sleepy. It's not a good thing. If it's really cold, you're going to shiver. You're not going to concentrate. So we adjust the temperature to our needs. Too hot is bad. Too cold, it's not good. So we try and make it the right temperature. But we don't seem to want to do that with young people in school. It's like, well, this is what we're doing. This is how you have to learn. So what's the problem? Well, the problem is it's not really conducive to the bulk of the people you're trying to educate.
Yeah, I'm really enjoying at the minute reaching out to others, especially at the moment, just in the UK. But this is absolutely, anybody worldwide who are taking the sensory super system, which is one of the things that the main thing that I offer to help people to assess and then treat and then manage those sensory needs in whatever setting. And starting to see now some people saying, look, I want to take this and take it to my school. They're not therapists and they don't have to be. I'm the one that holds the responsibility for the videos, for the training, for the content, for the professionalism, for the treatments that come with it, through the advice that comes with it. But they're so keen to try and get this into places that I'm like saying, yes, absolutely. You take this, you show them what this can do. And then we can get the word out there because there are so many, especially teachers, they're really, really wanting to help these children, but often it's like, I haven't a clue what to do. Never mind about have we got the budget and anything else. And it's just like, well, there are so many free things that can be done with a little bit of willingness, with some buy-in, with we just need to get the word out there. So I'm really encouraged by people taking the sensory super system and actually doing something with it and showing other people what the content is, and trying to help in their local area.
I do remember a teacher, a different teacher, who was a professor of geography stuff. I don't quite remember what. He was definitely a doctor. He was very proud. I got a doctorate, and he was teaching us about soil and how it's different. And I think we must have had glazed eyes of, right, it's brown and it's mucky. What? Seriously? He said, right, let's go for a little field trip. So we got out of the classroom, we walked down the field just where the hedgerows were, and he started getting dirt off the floor to try and teach us it. And it's one of the lessons that I'm nearly 50, so this is a long time ago. I still remember the lesson because we walked a mile probably to where this soil was that he wanted us to go and have a look at. He had it in his hands. He was eating it to show us it can make a gritty sound with his teeth. I tell you what, I remember that lesson, and I really grasped the idea that soil is not just brown gunk, it's actually made up of different components. And he demonstrated it in such a way. We had dirty hands by the end, and I loved it.
Oh, brilliant. What was that? Oh, the girls, not so much.
No.
Yeah, no. Well, that's it. No, it's but getting involved, using, and I love the fact that he used all the senses, so you could hear it, you could hear the grit. The kind of not quite the taste necessarily, but it all part and parcel of it. A very sensory. People talk about it being kinesthetic, but it's kind of like just foundationally, you are just using and engaging all the senses to feed your brain with the best information, so that you can then attach the cognitive thinking, the clever bit. You've got something to attach it to, because otherwise you hear these things and it kind of goes in one ear and out the other. We say that for good reason, because that's exactly what happens. It just it doesn't register inside the brain. It's kind of been there and gone, and it's not done anything. It hasn't had a purpose. It hasn't changed something. It hasn't brought a light bulb moment. It just hasn't connected. It's literally gone right the way through. So having all those different senses involved can help something really just connect in a way that for some will be life transforming, and others it will just help in their education and experience along the way.
Now, I've been talking in stereotypes and making a point of that. In that group that went down, in that class of 35, whatever children it was, young people, some of the girls didn't like it. Some of the boys didn't like it. Everybody's going to have their own little thing, but it was interesting to see such almost quite a polarized enjoyment of that lesson. Most of us enjoyed it because he was trying to engage us with something in a way that made it personal. Because when you hold a piece of dirt in your hand, it's not just soil. Now you can feel it. You can feel the texture. Has it got clay? Is there more sand in there? And it starts to make sense because you can feel it. And he was engaging the senses, of course, because we got a bit of smell from the soil. Not stinky bad, but it smells a bit soil. And you've got dirt on your hands. Now you can feel it. It's cold. Is it hot? Or just room temperature or air temperature? And it really, I don't know, it's one of those things that stuck in my mind. One, because it stuck in my head because it was really good. And also because it just brought it alive. And I think using the senses, and we've talked about this for somebody with dementia, and how using perhaps a smell can be a really good positive evocative way of connecting them with a memory that maybe they're struggling with because they're suffering from Alzheimer's, from dementia. And the senses, we either get frustrated by it, and we often talk about some of the problems that are caused and how do you fix it. But actually, it's not always about the problems. It's also about the benefits, which I know is something you're always trying to bring in. Yeah, okay, here's a problem. This isn't working, but I've got a joke for you in a second. But actually, there's lots of benefits to this as well. Watching a TV sitcom the other day, and somebody talked about the olfactory, and the gag came back. Why are you talking about a factory that's really old? Because of course, factories there anyway. Really bad joke. Olfactory, the part of the senses thing. But I just think sometimes we get so focused on the problems and solving it, we forget about just the joy and the benefit of the senses.
And that's just one of those lovely things to be taken back to. And regardless of where you stand spiritually, there's an awful lot of stuff like kind of mindfulness. I'm so glad that finally someone's realized that let's go back. Let us stop. Let us pay attention to our breathing. Let us pay attention to what is happening in the environment. Let's use those senses to help regulate ourselves. So it really isn't connected to any particular religion, apart from obviously the fact that we would believe that God made us and has given us our senses. We didn't come out of an amoeba. So we have been specifically designed to appreciate those things and for the senses to be used to help in our coordination, to help in our communication, to help in our love language, to help do skills. It's a lovely thing. And I think that's why I do love, sensory processing, and why I have for like 30 odd years of just investing and learning and just trying to bring out as much as I possibly can out of what I know of the senses to help feed into other people, to often bring relief, bring acceptance and hope. Yeah, for the future too.
Hope's good. I know you've mentioned this a few times when somebody's coming to you and you can easily understand the exasperation of somebody. Is that the right word? Yeah. Of somebody just like, I can't cope. This is never going to heal. I've had a problem with my sciatic nerve and it just feels like it takes forever. And in some ways it takes a long time. But there are moments of good and bad, and it's quite cyclic, and there's lots of waves of improvements. But there reaches a point when you're just tired and you're like, I just want this to be better. And you must have had that so many times with so many people who come your way. My child won't put socks on. My wife can't touch clay, or whatever it is. That's me, by the way. It's got to be glazed. It's weird. All these issues that we face in life, some of them more serious than others, and that was quite silly. But actually, she can't touch clay. She really, really can't. It has to be glazed. Otherwise, she's got this funny, weird thing going on. But whilst that's not a major problem, okay, she can't pick up unglazed clay. There are people who will have more serious problems. They can't pick up a piece of paper, which is still one of the stories you told me, which I still can't comprehend, that somebody out there cannot pick up a piece of paper because of the sensory input of the paper. I can believe it, and I can't all at one go. But that's the whole point of doing these. Hopefully, we're making someone feel better about the fact that, you know what, that thing you're struggling with, maybe there's a solution. And more importantly, you're not the only one.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. There's nothing that I haven't heard new for a long time, I think. I'm just trying to wrap my brain thinking of everybody that I've been speaking to recently, like for the last number of years. Like, there really is nothing new under the sun. And the struggles that people have, the way that they... Yeah, and the thing is that people don't talk about it. Thankfully now, social media, there is a way of people being able to express these things. So it's easier to find that you're not alone. The problem is then finding good advice so that you can actually, manage it properly. But that's definitely another thing. But just, I mean, like families, and they're just or people, and they're only eating 5 foods. That's it. And the parents are just, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to change it. And they don't realize that it's there'll be a tactile element in there somewhere. And they've never really considered the inside of the mouth, and therefore what it feels like for all of these things. And do they have the muscle control to be able to manage different types of foods in there so that then they don't choke? That it's a real preservation thing that they do, either because they hate the feeling of something inside their mouth and they don't understand it, they can't process it, or they overreact to their sensations because of the way their tactile receptors are processing, or they physically don't have good muscle work to be able to handle how to chew, how to move things around, how to use the tongue so that they don't then gag and choke themselves. And the fear of dying, we do a lot of it without even realizing. That's why we don't walk on the edges of cliffs and walls and things like that unless we are being particularly challenged by something, or we just have an inbuilt safety that most of us are not even aware of why we do the things that we do. We just know that we would not do that, and we don't, we just don't want to do it. We don't do it.
I love the fact that a child that's a couple of weeks old can be sick and turn its head. Like, who taught it to do that? That's inbuilt protection, which I absolutely think is phenomenal. And it's one of those things that just reminds me that we're created on purpose with a purpose. You know, there has to be more. There has to be a designer involved, because who's told that 2-week-old infant, that 10-day, 5-day, 3-day-old baby, oh, you've been sick, turn your head. Like, you ain't teaching that child much at that point, and yet they know. How do they know? Well, it's because it's about life, and life is good. And we know that God's designed them. They're where they are.
And there's something about that development that I've been, learning about and going into, what that at 4 weeks in development, like in the womb, this is only at 4 weeks, there starts to be a separation between what will become the hearing centers and the vestibular system. So the vestibular system is how we relate to gravity and our two sides of the body, our muscle tone and our posture and all kinds of things like that. And yet it's the same structure. Everything, those two elements come out of the same structure, and it starts at 4 weeks old. There are loads of other parts of the embryo, the tiny little baby, that will develop into their own areas, but these two are intimately linked right from 4 weeks after conception. And that is huge and beautiful and powerful, and has a real impact that if somebody is deaf, it's going to affect their vestibular systems. And, there's so much more we could talk about, but maybe that's for another time.
Maybe next week. I was going to go that conversation, but we veered off, as happens with me. Anne, thank you. If you want to connect with Anne, if you've got questions, you're thinking, the sensory system, that sounds rather interesting. I'm sure it's said better than that by Anne. Yes, it is. If you want to find out more, you go to the website, pure247radio.org, www.pure247radio.org/ALJ, and you can connect with Anne Laure Jackson and her sensory super system. Have I got it right yet?
Yeah, that's great.
To get there at the end. Anne, thank you.
Great. See you next time.
The very first edition of our brand new monthly magazine, By Men for Men, hits the streets from the 1st of May. Pure Men's Mag is go. We've pulled together the very best writers we could find, scouring the earth, looking high and low, which means we've done the hard work for you. All you have to do is grab yourself a subscription. We've got digital subscriptions available everywhere via our website, or a 6-month subscription of these high-quality, non-digital, tactile interfacing devices. They don't crash, they don't need updates, the battery is always at 100%. And even better, a brand new one appears every single month. Just head yourself over to www.puremensmag.com and grab yourself a copy. These are by men, for men, and always AI free. Pure Men's Mag is a go.